Well, greetings friends and welcome back. Here it is, it's big, it's sleek, it carries a preposterous amount of cargo, it has the maneuverability of a block of flats. It is the Imperial Cutter. So to begin with, we're standing here under the nose, very much nearly under the nose of the Imperial Cutter, and well, I can't help but be a little bit biased. This thing looks ridiculously good. That staircase going up into the entry hall there, you can see the door and a bit of a sort of curved interior from here. I'll try and get a better look from that, from the inside. There's also a corridor that you can see right up the top there above the, I don't know, the gills or whatever that silver shiny thing on the side is covered by the door. And if that is meant to be a corridor, it's about that high. So there's a few things broken with the scale of the exterior of the ship, and we'll get to that later on. I'll try and pop a fighter out and have a bit of a look on some of the outsides as well. Anyway, that's enough of that. Let's get out of here, shall we? So as we pop up to the surface, we may as well have a quick look around. Now here we see Commander Headless, actually not sitting all that comfortably. You can see that there's quite a bit of a gap there between Commander Headless's back and the rear side of the seat, which is a bit weird. The seat is kind of your normal HR Geiger seat that we have seen before. There's nothing special about it, this particular style of seat at all. But you can see it's on a bit of a dais, which is sitting up proud from the floor, and you don't really get that impression when you're just sitting there, but certainly you can see it's quite a bit raised. We'll get ourselves down into that section in a minute. So from the sides of Commander Headless, we have these two grab handles, which are really just connected to, I don't know what this is, it's just a bit of a thing sticking out. I mean, look, it's designed to be pretty, but perhaps not entirely functional. These ships are, yeah, nice looking, but there's some weird stuff going on. The floor is that same sort of microchip kind of print that we have seen before. I'll give you a proper look. There you go. Bit of a microchip print like we've seen in the Eagle and the Clipper, and all the Imperial ships have that sort of pattern. Don't ask me why. And the seat itself seems to slide backwards on this strut. Now, I would imagine that would slide all the way back there to those orange arrows, but there'd be a hell of a drop down here. So presumably if it is designed to slide, it probably needs to be flattened out, and it is floating up in the air, which we have seen before in these Imperial seats, and I'm not sure why. Now from the rear of the pilot seat, you can see there's a bit of a walkway and well, it slopes down and all the way around there and to the front, but there's kind of nothing here. And you can see from this angle that there is a huge amount of space between where the pilot's chair is and that thing jutting out and this wall. So it seems somewhat oversized for what it actually is. And this desk, perhaps, is entirely unusable because that's a good 6-foot drop. So if you were standing down the bottom there, it'd be kind of at your eye height. So I'm not sure what's going on there. In terms of these emitters, this one is the size of a small dinner plate, or probably regular sized dinner plate. And the rest of everything else is about the same. Again, this is about the size of a normal dinner plate. And the main projector is approximately 100 centimeters maybe in diameter. The projection of the starport is on a small sort of dinner plate, and then we have the rest of the dash, which I'll get into right now. It's going to be a lot of resetting in this video because the deck of this thing is quite huge. So a close-up view of this section of the dash kind of reveals that it's got a fairly steep cutaway there at the end, with this carbon fiber sort of material that we have seen before, and these inlays, which could be screens or displays or something, but they don't actually show anything. Now you remember, if you've flown this ship before, if you're sitting over there where Commander Headless is, there is a sort of flashing light, and you can see it there, very small, but it's blinking on and off, and it's always frustrated me because why do we have a blinking light? It makes no sense. There's 3 of these circular things, which I want to say are little screens because they're reflective, and some more indicators down here. Again, designed to be pretty, not necessarily functional. And here in the center area, you'll see the other blinking white light there. which is just about as pronounced from all the way back there as it is from over here, which is a little strange. The panel is inlaid with the good old brushed aluminium and some sort of, I don't know, something. Again, some fingerprints and smudges. Obviously the Imperial slaves haven't done a very good job with this area. You can see more smudges here. Another little emitter there, presumably for these screens. And then the center console, which is just more carbon fiber and inlays. Now, for the amount of time that the pilot seat is actually occupied in this side is far dirtier. I don't know what's going on here, but you can see tons of fingerprints and smudges and marks over there. There's tons over here on this panel. I'm not even sure why you'd be reaching this far. And on the emitter over here itself, there's quite a few as well. I mean, it's lovely because it gives it a lived-in sort of feel, but also for an Imperial ship, which should be buffed to within an inch of its life, there are a lot of smudges. Again, you can see more on this screen here. Actually, I take it back, because looking back at the commander side from this vantage point, yeah, it's filthy. And here we have effectively the view from the Copilot seat, looking over there at the commander. Now, from here, you can see a bit more of the chair. You can see how uncomfortable it would actually be to be sitting on this kind of bucket seat. And yes, obviously in 0G it wouldn't make too much of a difference, but atmospheric flying or being parked here, you would not be wanting to be having your butt parked in there for any length of time. The other thing that's kind of obvious between these two seats is this large raised section. So if we have a bit of a look at that, it's got a strange sort of rhombus kind of profile. If we look inside, there's obviously nothing there. But again, it seems to serve no apparent purpose other than to just jut out and kind of really be decorative. It's certainly not structural, as it's not attached to anything underneath. And the rear side of it provides no clues as to what it's supposed to be either. There aren't any plugs, there's no lights, there's nothing underneath. Yeah, it's a thing. And from the pilot seat we can see another one of these things jutting out with just a grab handle on it. Nice human-sized grab handle. And the same deal with this rail coming down, and the slider system presumably for the chair with the same bump that they would have to get rid of. Right, now I said I would get in the front, and well, here I am. So this is pretty much tall enough for me to stand in. I'm 6 foot tall. I'd be pretty much touching the underside of this panel, but we could walk around in this section underneath the pilot seat and underneath the co-pilot seat pretty easily, to be honest. There's a fair amount of gap down here. And you can see from this vantage point, the commander and pilot seats are sort of on these balls that are just floating in midair. So there you are. And seeing as though from this location I can break your immersion, I will by sticking my head through the floor. Well, interestingly, we see some interior. Now that obviously is the top side of the hard point down here. And then there is probably another good 6 foot high container area under the cockpit. To the front, it sort of goes down there and goes into the point of the cutter. So the entire thing, the entire front of the cutter is hollow, save for that hard point down there, which is quite interesting. I have to admit, I did not expect that. One thing you can see, of course, is from the rear of the cockpit here is the jankiness of the reflections. And I'm not sure actually what it is. If there's a programmer watching, can you explain to me why, when you're looking at it normally it's fine, and when you're looking at it down here it's got this sort of weird wobble and shake as it's trying to reflect the exterior. I've got no idea what's going on there. Someone help me with that one. So here we are standing at the rear of the cutter and towards the door here, which we will get to in a second, or we'll try to anyway. There's some paneling over here hiding some stuff behind it, presumably electronics or some sort of a system for maintenance reasons. You have the good old-fashioned carbon fiber deck here for the desk. And over here we have some sort of paneling which is again jankily reflecting things. I was actually trying to reflect the commander's view, which is obviously completely wrong from this direction because it's all the way over there. But anyway, it's trying. Some extremely small displays here with a tick of some description, what looks like a lit USB port over there, and pump A, pump B, pump rear on and off, and some fuses presumably. Further along the wall here we have a repeat of this panel with some stuff behind it, I would guess. Some padded paneling up here for whatever reason, and some curved panels up the top. And there we can sort of see a little bit of a low texture situation for the roof, which seems to be leading it's about another 2 feet above that little bulkhead, where it actually disappears into nothingness. These orbs, or the circles here that are floating here in the roof, I'm not sure what they're for, other than to be decorative, but you can obviously at the front there's a ton of them as well. You've seen those a million times, there's no point in me showing those, you can see those from 2D. Now here we are roughly seated in Copilot 2 chair, who has got a reasonably good view out the front, but certainly a commanding view of the pilot and commander. Incidentally, would you like to know why the pilot's called pilot and the commander's called commander? It actually comes from the space shuttle, where the pilot was fine to be called pilot, but then the other pilot would be called what? Exactly, so they made it commander and pilot. There you go, fun fact. So it's obviously carried across to space in general in 3305, are we up to? So from here we can see a bit of a curved sort of desk that this person could maybe rest some stuff on, and underneath the desk we just see more of this piping that's coming along the side, and it has Good Am I written on it down the end there, which you can see from this vantage point as well. Some nice blue sort of maybe airbrushed or spray painted detailing there. Not sure what that's supposed to be other than pretty. And on the wall here we have a stretched and bizarrely shaped version of the panel that we had over there, and as you can see as well, it's flipped backwards. You can see Good Am I Systems is backwards, as are the pump switches, which are the same labels but backwards, and the fuse switches or whatever they're supposed to be. In addition to that, we have this blue floating circle, which is actually a physical thing. You can see has a mass to it, and it looks like it's more like super glued to the wall rather than a projection that's coming out from the wall, which is a bit weird. Okay, so I think it is time to try and get through this door. Now I'm nearly on the floor, I'm sort of floating a little bit. As we approach this door, it says lock and exit only, and there is a floating thing. Not sure whether that's supposed to actually be a handle of some description or is just a glitch, but it's a thing. Some more of those dual kind of style indicators, which are 3D and popping out very slightly, as you can see. But there's actually no handle on the door, which clearly that orange thing is supposed to be. Okay, let's step through, shall we? Obligatory door noise. And let's see what's on the other side. Right, well, unlike the bottom there, which you can see from the rear a little bit better, there is no further interior past that initial first section. Now I do have body kit on this. There's some of these little things on the side. That's a plant. Some of those things on the side are not there obviously on the regular version, just so you know. So right underneath us we can see this staircase, which is very long and gigantic. I'd estimate the whole thing to be 25 to 30 meters in length just for the staircase itself. And beyond that we can see the cargo bay, and beyond that is the fighter bay. From this vantage point also we can see at the rear there the landing gear, as my tracking goes a bit mental, but you can see those on the either side of the fighter bay there, and the array of hard points scattered all over this thing. It's a bit of a flying fortress. Now a lot of the side detail there you can see is low detail, and we see some of those interior textures that we've seen on the insides of all the different panels that we've seen in this series so far, probably beginning with the Diamondback Explorers the first time we saw them. And they're quite low polygon or low resolution textures. But you'll also remember from the Imperial Clipper video that there are kind of two versions of each ship. There's an inside version, as in when you're looking at the ship from this perspective, and then there is the exterior version, which is much more highly detailed. And that's kind of it. From this vantage point you can just see the rear aspects of the cutter and the wings, which again you can see are not the correct textures that you would expect to see if we were actually outside of this thing. You don't often see this screen from this vantage point, but you can also see that it actually goes straight through the seat, which is kind of funny. So it sort of creates its own mask and pushes through whatever's in front of it, which, to be honest, when I'm making this video is kind of handy. Alright, so as we go up, I'll have a look at this landing gear and the stairs and see what actually happens to it as it retracts, which is always an interesting proposition. Probably can't even smack me directly in the face, I imagine. So the stairs all flattened down, it actually folds in on itself. That's fascinating. Ah, nice. That actually looked pretty cool as it retracted and disappeared. You don't really get that vantage point from any other position, which is pretty awesome. Alright, so in order to get a better look at the exterior of this thing, I've popped myself in the fighter. We'll have a look at that in the very next video. But for the time being, I want to use it to look at some of the exterior details that you don't often get to see, or indeed can't see from any other vantage point. Now, as you can see, I'm standing outside the front of this fighter, which makes it a little bit weird. And here we can see the corridor that I was talking about before. So it is, well, in its entirety, I'll try and get a little bit closer maybe on the other side, but it's maybe about that high, the entire thing. So if it is supposed to be a human-sized corridor, well, it clearly is not one. It has a very low polygon texture underneath, but it seems to have some sort of maybe textured glass. It's hard to see, but yeah, you can definitely see the interior of that corridor, or it's supposed to be a corridor, but it doesn't actually allow a person to walk in there. Now, if that bottom aspect wasn't a floor and it actually went down another half a body length, then yeah, possibly it could be an actual corridor, but as is, not so much. Yes, I know I'm smacking into the ship. Now this side has always fascinated me, and you can sort of see that there's a bit of glass there and it's separating from the actual interior of the ship itself. And we can't unfortunately see this from the inside because it just won't let us, which is annoying. But I'll try and bash my way in there. It looks like there's meant to be another little corridor over there, which again, it definitely has got an interior. You can see that there is an interior beyond what we're actually looking at here, but it doesn't really go very far inside. And by my estimation, the depth of that section would probably be about so between the rear wall and the windows. And if it is supposed to be a walkway, then the windows would sort of be positioned sort of there above your head. But again, it is not deep enough to be a walkway. It is again only about so deep unto from the roof up to about your belly. So again, they would have to drop that right down into the ship for you to be able to walk down that corridor. But in theory, it is a hallway and you could potentially walk down it. Down underneath here, there is also another hallway, which you can see again does pretty much exactly the same thing as the other one. We can't really get any closer to it than this. I'm already far out in front of where I'm supposed to be. So yeah, this is kind of going to be about as close as we get. That one is very narrow. It's about that thick in total. So yes, again, lots of work would need to be done for these corridors to actually be walkable. And these over here do seem to be side windows that again look to the interior of the ship, and you can see that it does move and it does have an interior, or a suggested interior. That hallway again is about half a meter in thickness. So again, it would need to be completely redone for it to be actually walkable with a human. This side area has always fascinated me. I haven't really been able to work out what on earth it's meant to be. Clearly it is covered by a glass sort of shape. This thing really does not want us to get any closer than we are, and as it is, we're pretty close. So the side there, you can see the insignia there on the side, as well as this sort of large oval shape. I'd estimate the entire thing to be probably 15 meters long and about 10 or so high. It's a slight oval shape. It has those wings or gills or whatever they are coming on the outside, and then a glass front that covers it. Now, where it is at the insignia there, they're quite sort of close together. They're probably about a foot apart, the glass and the insignia itself. But as we go towards the rear there with those orange lights, it's probably about 3 feet to roughly a meter, meter and a half perhaps, of separation between the sides of the ship and the window itself. Just won't let me any closer. Come on. Frontier refuses to allow me to get any closer. They don't want to divulge their secrets. Then right up the top here, we obviously have the large hardpoints, and we have yet another viewing platform or something. This one we can actually get reasonably close to. Hooray! Now seemingly it won't even let us put our head through it, because if I get closer it goes black. It knows what I'm trying to do, just will not let me. Come on. Well anyway, the front of the cockpit here, or whatever this thing is sitting right there. Each one of these windows is about 6 inches in height, and you can see down there that there's a lot of that low, come on, there's a lot of that low res detailing down there trying to be floor. Oh, this is frustrating. I'm just going to keep talking. You can see through there's a bit of a lit sort of rear of the corridor, but again, this would be large enough for someone to lie down in if they were curled around that rear section. Certainly not to stand up in any way, shape or form. So it could potentially be a viewing deck, and from there you would basically see the rear of the 2 large hardpoints. So whether it's a control or maintenance area, it could be one of those. But as it is, it would probably only go up to about there if you were looking out of these windows. So again, it would have to be deepened significantly. And here we see the very tops and rear of the large hardpoint here. And you can see some of the greebling that you find on top of the hardpoints. You can see some of the signage, which says, warning, ammunition feeds to be kept clear with arrows. And potentially I can give you a bit of a view here of the rear of the large hardpoint with what appears to be some indicator lights and a handle and some piping and greebling. Yeah, you don't ordinarily get to be this close to a large hardpoint, do you? So in this case, I believe this is a pulse laser. If we stick our head through it, we just see more of the other side and more of the interior of the pulse laser, and then stuff coming around the front. Very low polygon, low texture, low res kind of stuff, which is what you'd expect for a thing that you normally are looking at from way over there. And for the sake of completeness, here is a close-up look of the large multi-cannon, the barrel of which is probably as big as my room. If it starts there, it continues on for another 3 meters, I would say, from that point. And if we stick our head into it, we'll obviously be able to see those barrels rotating around, of which there are 5. I always thought there was 6. There you go. And into the rear, we can see some of the mechanism holding it all up. And these strut arms are very long. They're probably a good 2 meters in length, each one of those struts, which, you know, you'd expect for a big, beefy thing like this. These appear to be maybe ammunition cassettes or cartridges, and nothing on the inside apart from some more greebling and stuff. And don't worry about that pipe. That's part of the fighter, which is sitting over there, giving me this interesting view. And in case you're wondering, yeah, it still registers the ship as a physical thing, so if I try and get closer, it just goes decidedly black. I wish there was a mod to get rid of that, but yeah, even if I go through it and try and get through the black into the next section, it just won't let me do anything. So yeah, bit of a shame. Now standing here pretty much inside the rear main engine, you can see it all around me there. So the emitter for the engine is probably 4 meters in diameter. This is the large one. The smaller ones up there probably 2 meters, and 2 meters all the way out to the side as well. Now coming in under the ship, you can see this huge hardpoint, which is the first time we've seen one of these, I think. And handily, they're not physical objects, so you can see we can actually fly inside the hardpoints themselves, which is kind of trippy. I don't think I was supposed to actually be doing this. There you go, so the fighter is now entirely parked within the huge hardpoint, and we can see those 4 massive barrels there coming out the front. They're probably about 4 meters long. And up above you can see an equally hefty sort of bits of greebling and attachments for this huge hardpoint itself. And if we fly out of it, you'll be able to see how those attach with those massive hooks and things all the way into the bottom. We can nearly trying to stick my face into this hardpoint, because we know from earlier that there is an interior to this section. Aha! Well, I can stick my face into it, but from this direction, we can't really see the interior other than that it's a flat piece of texture going out in front, and kind of a similar shape like what we saw in inside when we jumped underneath the cockpit. And I appreciate I'm completely off camera here, but you can see the interior here underneath where the cockpit is. Here is just textured with a flat sort of texture that looks like a door to a bulkhead or something, which is quite interesting. No, my mistake. That's just the exterior of the huge hardpoint itself. There we are. I can see there's the interior of the huge hardpoint. If we just stand on tippy toes and stick my head through. But then yes, above that would be the section that we've seen previously. But yes, so this is the front. Again, there's nothing in it other than the thrusters. This is the huge hardpoint, and above that would be the section that we saw underneath the legs of the commander and pilot themselves. So it's pretty frustrating because this thing will let us fly strangely into some areas of the ship and yet not others. See if I can just push into the nose itself. Aha, but again, if I reset myself, I'll be able to stick my head in. There we are. There's a piece of my fighter. Aha, there we go. So at least we can see the inside of the section that I was referring to just then. So where the commander is up there, the underside, which would be there between the floor of the commander's seat and the top of the hardpoint, and the hardpoint itself. And down the bottom there, it's got a few bits and bobs and that flat piece of texture. Bizarre that it lets us into some areas and then it goes black when we try to get into some of the other areas. But there you go, that's elite dangerous consistency for you. Oh, it might actually let us have a look inside. Hang on. If I walk forward enough, maybe I'll be far enough forward to push my head through there. Possibly. Aha. If we can stick our head in there, there we are. Ouch. So we can actually see the bulkheads and the stand clear and a few other bits and bobs that we have come to see previously inside the cargo bay. A pretty cool view of it though, regardless. So by that reasoning, will it let us go inside any of the other bits? Ah, it will. Okay, so from the underneath, you can go inside. Okay, so there we can see the back of the cargo bay. This is a bizarre orientation for me because I'm having to stare down. There is the interior of one of those corridors that we have seen earlier, that blue stripe. And there is another one up the top there, and the other one on the other side. And if we look that way, we can see a bit more of the interior of the ship. Now I'm craning my head straight up into the air, which is why my voice sounds so weird. But there we are. That's probably as good as we're going to get in terms of a view that we're not supposed to have. And see if we can get into these outriggers. Nope. What about from underneath? Yes, seems like it will let us. Okay, it seems like they're not even solid in any way, shape or form. That's bizarre. Okay, so now we're inside the outrigger there on the left-hand side of the ship as if we were looking forward. And you can just see that it's sort of fairly rudimentary and empty. You can see the inside of the hardpoint there and the rear of the engine with all its, I guess, cooling coils or heat distributors or whatever those things are. Can we get any further in? No, that's about the extent. And then looking back into the wing, in towards the sides of the ship, we get, well, that sort of a view there, fairly self-explanatory. Interesting. Again, interesting that it lets us in from underneath, but not on top. So there we are, friends, the Imperial Cutter, my favorite out of the big three, certainly for its cargo carrying capacity, if nothing else. And yes, while it's not the greatest offensive ship, its defensive capabilities are excellent. And I only say offensive because of its maneuverability. Anyway, I'll go and look at another one, and I'll bring that video to you very shortly. In fact, I think the very next one is going to be the fighter that we've been using, seeing as though I'm already in it, so I may as well record that one. So until then, fly safe, commanders, and I'll see you in the black.